The reason that most of us are here today, of course, is for the Hang 10 400, which is the traditional lead up to Bathurst, and what a race it looks like being.
Going to be fantastic. Drew, as a matter of fact, I've just come back from the pit area. While I was down there, I was having a look at what could be one of the dark horses of this race, the Alan Grice BMW 3.5 litre turbocharged. The last time it was here, it was very, very rapid, and I think it's going to be right there at the finish today.
Cylinder car. It's six-cylinder engine, only 3,500 cc's, which makes it very hard to run with 5 and 6 litre cars. But it's a motor car that doesn't use as much fuel. It's pretty aerodynamic. It'll slip through the air pretty well. It's heavy, unfortunately, but that's the weight that cams have given us to run with. But the hope in long-distance races is that our fuel economy and the reliability will overcome the initial sprint of the quick cars. We never intend to be able to sprint with the 5 and 6 litre cars. It's just not on with that sort of capacity against you. But over the longer distances, we certainly will hope to make it up in pit stops. It's a pretty demanding circuit, and it historically takes its toll on cars and tyres, and we certainly hope to be very strong at the end of the day.
And there we have the John Player team ready for Alan Grice to come in.
Coming in now, Alan Grice running extremely well. He's second outright. What a great run. His car down on power and up on weight on the opposition V8s. Well suited to this circuit. Will he drop his second place to third place Steve Harrington in car number 27? Fourth place to car number 25. We'll go to John Smales in just a moment, but car 25, the John Harvey Holden dealer team car.
The key to this stop will be how many tyres they have to put on.
The well-oiled Alan Grice team in the pits. Grice sucking on a drink. Alan, how's the car going? Still sucking on a drink, which is very hard to talk to him while he's doing that, but he needs that nourishment because you can see the sweat all over his face. 25 seconds gone, 2 tyres going in. Alan, how's the car?
The car's pretty good, just this little bit of a wisp of smoke here in the cab. Probably coming from the gearbox, but hard to identify. I'll just have another drink.
Car almost ready to go. In fact, he's not leaving himself much time to have his drink. 3 churns of fuel in, 40 seconds gone. The tyres are right. I'm going to stand back because I don't think I'm going to get another chance to talk to him. He's gone with his dry brake flap open, so that causes a problem for Alan Grice. I'd suggest 49 seconds to stop. That's not bad, but he's gone with the flap from his dry brake system open. Is that a problem for him with the dry brake flap open?
No.
Okay, the pit crews say no, so we'll see what happens.
It's automatic closing.
Fascinating part of the circuit here as Alan Grice comes spearing off the top. John Harvey not far in front of him. Chris Gibson sandwiched between them temporarily. Grice going out for a long way around and didn't pull it off and probably wasted a little bit of time there.
That was the last thing he needed because it's going to affect his run onto the straight.
And he's got the information from Frank Gardner and the boys in the pits. Got radio contact as well as the usual pit signalling equipment, and he's out after John Harvey. And he tails him by 2.35 seconds. You can see the gap there. Very little in it. And let's hear about the situation from John Smales in the pit area.
I've got Frank Gardner with me. He's the pit manager for the Alan Grice team, and the gap's only 3 seconds to third place for him.
Down to 3 seconds with about 20 laps to run, so...
How is Grice handling it? Is he catching him?
He's been pulling him in for the last 15 laps at about a second a lap, so we're looking good at this point in time.
Well, that's a big feather in your cap to get up there into third place if he can do it. But, of course, John Harvey is not an easy man to pass.
John will have a very wide car, I would think, in about the next 4 laps.
You happy with the car, Frank?
Cars ran well all day, yes, we're very happy with it. we're all pretty new with it with long distance racing, but it's certainly come into line nicely, and if it finishes today, we'll be more than pleased.
The smoke that Grice was complaining about in the cockpit, is it getting worse or better?
No, it's gone away. It's cured itself, so it's obviously run out of oil or we're cured.
Frank Gowder, thank you.
Well, it doesn't look as if it's cured to us from our picture. As you saw there, a little bit of smoke coming still from the back of the BMW 635 CSI.
And did you notice that breather pipe trailing under the middle of the car? Well, I think they have a fair bit of boot space. This tussle here, you know, could well be decided by luck of the draw in the traffic jams.
I think Grice, frankly, has got too much on him for that to be critical. Unless, of course, he gets brought entirely undone.
Well, he's, you know, unless Harves is in a bit of bother and is prepared to let him go, Grice is in trouble.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Yes, Grice is out of it.
Well, that makes the argument academic.
Protests may have been flying thick and fast, but all of the teams and drivers agree they're happy at least to have a race back at Mount Panorama.
You know, about 2 months ago, the Bathurst 1000 looked to be deader than my friend Patrick Neal here, resting in peace in the Bathurst Cemetery. But thanks to a massive injection of capital from Tui's, it seems that the Bathurst 1000, or the Tui's 1000, as it's now known, is alive and well and throbbing in the bosom of petrol heads all over Australia. And we thought we'd celebrate that rescue, that dramatic financial rescue, in song. What better song than Tui's own famous jingle? Ready, Mr. Music?
How do you feel about 1,000 clicks round the old hot mix in Bathurst town? How do you feel? You want to pack your kit, drive up the road a bit to watch the boys go? How do you feel? It's Dickie and Brock, the place is hot, without a doubt. How do you feel? The General and Ford settle old scores till the flag comes out. How do you feel about the slide and slam on the old race cam, 7 Sport? How do you feel? The sponsors bailed, Bathurst might be nailed, it might come to naught. How do you feel? You need a load of bucks, it's the Panorama drama again. How do you feel? You need to sign a new deal. I feel like Tui's. I feel like Tui's. Tui's 6 million will do. 7, if we could. Thank you.
Only 48 cars to start this year. The stewards have ruled out several competitors. They're not happy about it. But let's check out who are the top qualifiers for this year's great race, the Tui's 1000.
Saturday's pole qualifying has been a traditional part of the 1000 for several years. But yesterday's Tui's top 10 was strictly for the dollars. 40,000 of them, in fact. The protest entered by Tom Walkingshaw against the Sierras of Dick Johnson, Tony Longhurst and Colin Bond on Friday effectively meant the Ford boys had precious little time to ready their cars for the Tui's shootout. Johnson's counter-protest against Walkingshaw's Holden didn't affect proceedings as Uncle Tom was well outside the top 10.
Yeah, it should have been sorted out on Tuesday and Wednesday at scrutineering when they went through. We asked them to do it of their own accord. They all can't be right. We only want to know which one's right. But there's about 7 different versions out there. 6 of them are wrong.
And welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst for the first time ever. A warm-up Sunday morning prior to the start of the Tui's 1000. The car's just going out onto the circuit now. And we're tracking around with George Fury, car number 30, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Sharing the car with him today will, of course, be Mark Scaife, driver who ran into a spot of bother here on Friday when taken out of the field of play into the concrete wall, so they had a little work to do on the number 30 car. But George Fury from Talmalmo in New South Wales looking sharp as he goes across the top of Mount Panorama.
Oh, Neil Crompton, I think this 20-minute warm-up on the Sunday morning would be an innovation the drivers would appreciate.
Very much so. For years the drivers have cried out for a warm-up in this race. How many times have we seen guys breaking axles on the start line, getting shunts at the first corner, and as a result of the fact that the tyres aren't warm, the transmissions aren't warm, and neither are the drivers for that matter. So this is an opportunity to get everything in readiness, and with this event being run under FIA international rules, it's a mandatory requirement that they have a warm-up. So George Fury giving the Nissan something at the moment, just getting it to full operating temperature, and some of the teams using this as a chance to just bed in their final set of brake pads, scrub up the final set of tyres and make sure that everything's hanging in there.
There's race cam now with Alan Grice, who will be driving car number 2, the FAI Insurance's Commodore. Sharing the driving with Alan today will of course be Win Percy. They ran so strongly here last year. Had an accident also on the Friday, as I recall, put the car into the wall at the top of the mountain, had a huge rebuilding job. But they were very competitive in the early part of the race. Gricey back from Europe, where he's been campaigning for Nissan, and he seems reasonably happy with car number 2.
Blew an engine in that car on Friday, I think it may have been, Friday morning. Right at the end of the first session, the car was going pretty well, but all of a sudden it let go on this pit straight in a huge way, and they had to do a lot of work on the car to get it back in shape. But Grice was pretty happy yesterday in the Tui's top 10 shootout, and recorded a healthy time, and it's a very good looking car, the FAI Insurance Commodore, with a lot of good work put into it. Les Small, the guy behind it, he's the chief engineer, and the Roadways team have always done pretty well here at Bathurst, and Grice was the winner in '86.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars. Football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
Football and meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
I think you better tell me again.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
In case you're wondering, this film is brought to you by football, meat pies, kangaroos and Australia's own car.
They go together underneath the southern stars.
You know, for just on 20 years, the good old all-Aussie trusty Holden has successfully rattled down pit lane. The lane and thankfully the Holden have changed a fair bit over the years, and a variety of racing Holdens have been more successful here at Mount Panorama than any other manufacturer. McPhillamy Park, thank you, driver.
Makes sense to me!
The Bathurst Honour Roll shows Holden as the all-time champion with 13 wins. The battle of the brands has always been close, and Ford aren't far behind with 10. That accounts for 23 of the 27 wins to date, with Vauxhall, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar and Morris battling for the minors. However, the indications this season suggest that Ford aren't far away from victory number 11. Nick Johnson's Shell Sierras ran away with the national touring car crown. Alan Moffat kept the ball in Ford's corner at Sandown recently. And overseas, Andy Rouse conquered England's Touring Car Classic at Silverstone, whilst the Texaco Fords run by Rudy Eggenberger have set the pace in the European Championship. Frightening stuff for Holden fans, isn't it? This sudden crush from the Blue Oval Badge boys sent a ripple to Australia's touring car kings at Holden, and they've responded accordingly. Inevitable defeat was postponed last year by Peter Brock with his 9th Bathurst win, and by Alan Moffat after winning the first round of the inaugural World Championship and finishing 4th at Spa. But the performance comparison to the Ford was disastrous no matter how you looked at it. Holden's new marriage with Tom Walkinshaw Racing in the UK was the answer. The trick? To find more from the existing car. The wind tunnel was the first stop, and armed with plenty of clay, TWR found heaps of downforce. Making a 1,300 kilogram car slip through the air wasn't easy. Walkinshaw described the car as having the aerodynamics of a brick. TWR's idea was to make the brick fly. On paper, it looked easy enough, but time and money were eaten up finding the answers. After romping with the Play-Doh, this is what they did. From the Clark Kent guise of a normal VL Series Commodore, the base Group ASS was devised. Under the skin, changes were aplenty, but it was the addition of 21 fiberglass components that drastically changed the shape and performance of the car, which led to the full-blown weapon, the wild-looking new Group A race car. But one thing had to be added: more grunt. The extra horsepower came via a fuel-injected version of one of the oldest and most successful engines in motorsport, Holden's 308 V8. The complete package is made for circuits like Spa and Bathurst. With just under 500 horsepower and a body built for business, the Holden carries the hopes of many.
I think everybody is quietly confident that we've got the goods with this particular car. We haven't had quite the amount of development and testing in a race environment as we would have liked, but Larry and the guys behind the scenes have been doing a tremendous amount of work, and at the end of the day we won't have any excuses.
The aerodynamic package that has been developed in the wind tunnel is a big step, you know, flying cars around the world and get them into wind tunnels. The engine incorporates the very latest in electronic fuel management. All that stuff's real state of the art, and they've matched it with, durability components, conrods, crankshaft blocks, all things that help us race-wise and make your road engine last 10 times as long are all there, and I think it's going to be a real good package.
If it's possible to end up with the opposite to a Ford Sierra, this car is it. Tom Walkinshaw, Larry Perkins Engineering and Holden's have made a massive commitment to the new Commodore. Right now in the pit paddock, there's a few execs nervously awaiting 4:30 and the moment of truth for their new toy. They're hoping, of course, the Lion will roar. Explaining the power of the Ford is tough, but the RS500 Cosworth version of the Sierra is a fast weapon. To help your understanding of how much power it has, imagine a car with 7 times the power of your basic Nissan Pulsar, or over twice as much power as Tom Selleck's Ferrari. Powered by a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the twin-cam 16-valve power plant turns this fast touring car into a fire breather. With big brakes and a well-balanced chassis, this package is the most formidable bar none. Turbocharging enabled Ford's engineers to keep the weight down using a tiny engine, and they've generated the kind of horsepower seen not so long ago in Formula One cars.
The Ford Sierra. There's Tony Longhurst just coming off the top of the mountain onto Conrod Straight.
Bicentennial Bits brought to you by Doug Mulray, an Australian doing his bit to Australia.
It's hard to imagine, looking at the sophisticated, cosmopolitan Bathurst of today, the wilderness that existed here when Captain James Cook first sailed up the Great Western Highway in 1770. Of course, the trip from Sydney 200 years ago took a week, nearly twice as long as it takes us on the fabulous Aussie roads of today. The world already knows Pitt Town and Pittsburgh, but here is yet another famous place named after Sir William Pitt, Pitt Strait. Of course, over behind me, George Strait and Castlereagh Strait over here. It was here Captain Cook decided to build a motor racing circuit. Of course, the motor car hadn't been invented back then, let alone raced, but Cook, a man of vision, knew it had to come. Sailing to Bathurst was very hard, and besides, he had shares in Ampol. Over the next 200 years, Bathurst grew from a 2-bit boring backwater with a dusty racing circuit to a 2-bit boring backwater with a very big racing circuit. Of course, facilities have been improved too. Gone are the days when you plugged in your vibrator and all the lights went dim. Now it's all mod cons. 20 watts, good boy. Get this into you. What a lad. In 1988, our bicentennial year, drivers travelled from all over the world to participate in what is widely recognised as one of the greatest motor racing contests of them all. Protest time at the Tui's 1000, Bathurst. A time best forgotten.
Bicentennial Bits brought to you by Doug Mulray, an Australian doing his bit to Australia.
Doug Mulray, the man who turned insanity into an industry.
And here he is, and just look at the marshals around the circuit and the spectators up on top of the mountain giving him such a tremendous cheer. This will be a corner that Dick might treat just a little bit gingerly today. This is where he had the problem yesterday, hit those tyres, the back of the car got into the wall, but Dick Johnson has made the starting grid for the 1983 James Hardy 1000.
Sitting in here with Andrew Harris. Andrew, you were the almost forgotten man about the big drama last time, swapping cars. It was you who gave your car to Dick Johnson. Well, Dick's in trouble, but how's the car that you got going?
Well, the car that Dick gave me to compensate me for giving me his car is flying, and we're having very few problems with it. We've had a slight oil leak, which we've now rectified. The car feels very strong. Gary Cook's back in the car and lapping at about 223, 224. I think the car's going to go well, and we'll probably run out in the top 10 if it holds together.
Well, it's fine for Gary. He's used to driving Commodores, but it's your first stint. You were driving Falcons up till now.
That's right.
How did you find it getting into an absolutely strange motor car?
Oh, it was really odd. I mean, I stepped in the car. The Falcon, as you know, is a very light car to drive because it's got power steering, but very big. And all of a sudden, I'm in a Commodore, and you can actually see out of the car in a Commodore. You can see the ground there, and you can see the ground there, and it's a much faster car out of corners and much more twitchy. So it took me about 10 laps to settle into it before I got down to reasonable times.
Andrew, what sort of deal was worked out that enabled you to give your car to Dick Johnson and accept another car from someone else?
Well, basically the way it started, Dick's wife walked past me, and I think Jill's one of the loveliest people in motorsport, and she was in tears. And I thought, well, the fans would much prefer to see Dick Johnson out there than Andrew Harris. So I said to Jill, listen, go and tell Dick he can have my car and I'll pull out of the race. And as soon as I did that, the manager of Prudential came down, not the manager of Prudential, Palmer's, yeah. Came down and said, no, we won't accept that. We'd love to take the car because Dick has to run a Falcon. We will find you another car to race. And you can see on the screen, there it is, running strong as strong.
And backed by the people of Bendigo?
Yes. It's just, we did a straight changeover, in fact. I'm using that car for the weekend, which is now, in fact, owned by Dick Johnson. At the end of the weekend, I get my car back and Dick gets his back. But I think the way this thing's going, we might try and talk a deal at the end of the weekend.
Well, you totally confused me. I forgot, I don't know who owns what car, but at least you're going well. Yes. And the people of Bendigo have every right to be cheering.
Thanks very much, Evan.
Thank you, Andrew Harris. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much to Evan Green and Andrew Harris. There's Gary Cook in the car, the Bendigo 9 Commodore coming down through the dipper. Yes, amazing deal, the way that was worked out within a couple of hours yesterday of the crash during qualifying by Dick Johnson.
Ross Palmer from Palmer Prudential is the man with the fat checkbook that just scribbles his name on the wall of all those zeros. And it allowed everybody to come out happy. The Palmer Prudential Falcon back on the racetrack, at least for a time. And certainly Harris and Cook were happy.
Super 6 Series, all six-cylinder cars, and on the pole in car 24, Gary Martin in a Datsun Bluebird with a 4.3-litre motor. Right at the back of the field, the interesting one is car 36, the Tirana XU1, normally driven by Mike Barnes, being driven by Alan Grice. Flag is held aloft now, under starter's control. Flag drops and away they go, and all boys get away pretty well. Gricey starting to already work his way through the field, and Brian Rhodes has been left at the start, but that incredible Datsun Bluebird, I'm not sure what the motor is, a 4.3 motor, probably a bored-out 4.1 Ford, but it's a six-cylinder car, and he's taking right away. Johnny Glasson holding down in second place at the moment. Then there's the big charger of Dougie Jack and Murray Jackman. They'd be holding down in third place. The number 9 car of Mike Medham trying to get through on the outside of Alan Grice, who's already barged his way through into fourth place, and he's held Medham wide and makes up yet another place. So at the moment, out in front is Gary Martin in the Datsun Bluebird. Gee, I'd love to have a look at the motor on that, a 4.3-litre 6. That's a big engine for a Datsun Bluebird. Second place at the moment would still be being held down, I think, by Johnny Glasson in the Ford Capri, and then the big charger of Dougie Jack and Murray Chapman. And Grice was up there into fourth as they went down into the dipper. Flag being waved, which means there's a fair bit of traffic coming up behind, and look at the charge over the top of that hill. It's all headed at the moment by Gary Martin. Second place is the Capri of Johnny Glasson, but third and fourth where the action is, that's Dougie Jack and Alan Grice. Alan Grice, of course, a national car driver, already over here running in the Tirana for a bit of a run. There's a third place man, car 65. Grice comes down, and have a look already. Brian Rhodes, who missed the start, but he's running a turbocharged 3-litre Tirana XU1, and he's holding down in fifth place at this stage and well in touch with all the rest of them except the leader, who's Gary Martin. And Martin's cleared away by about 30 or 40 metres over the next man through, which is Johnny Glasson in the 45 car. That's a Ford Capri with a 3.6 litre 6-cylinder motor in it. Down the bottom now, and the boys start to make the gearboxes and brakes and clutches work overtime as they snap it down from fourth down into second for the long climb up the hill. Then they grab third, and they're ready looking for top just as they crest the top of the hill. In fact, there it is, and it's Gary Martin in command of things at the moment. That looks like Grice has barged his way through into second place already. He has. It's Grice into second place. Martin's out in front at the moment in the Roo Dog. You can see the twin pipes on that, which indicates to me it's probably turbocharged, because one of them would be a wastegate. But Grice is through into second place now. Now third place held down by Johnny Glasson, and Brian Rhodes in fourth. There's Brian Rhodes coming through. Just coming into shot now. That's Brian Rhodes in a turbocharged 3-litre Tirana XU1, and doing it very, very well indeed after missing the start somewhat. But the action's coming now. Here's our race leader, Gary Martin, and Alan Grice is starting to haul him in hand over fist as they go up now through that bend, and you can see how Grice has closed the gap now on Gary Martin in the Datsun Bluebird. Alan Grice, of course, one of Australia's very few truly professional race car drivers, and he's well and truly in command of things at the stage. Mike Medham in the number 9 car, dropping right back off the pace at the moment. And Medham's tailing them all home. Must have, I'd say, probably had an excursion somewhere off the circuit while we were concentrating on the front of the field. Over the top of the Motorcraft hill they come now, and Grice just grabs the lead away from Gary Martin. And I tell you what, as they say in horse parlances, you can just about tear away your tickets, punters, because Alan Grice, when he gets in front, is impossible to pass. But Gary Martin's going to stick with him and go for the slipstream down the straightaway. Has Grice got the legs to pull it out and break up the turbulence? No, there's still nothing between them, so it's Grice from Martin as they go through. Glasson back into third place with Rhodes right on his tail, but the action's on at the front of the field, and you can see the flames come out as Martin backs off and the fuel injector overrun takes in, and raw fuel's dumped into the super hot exhaust pipe and just flares out. But it's Grice out in front at the moment from Gary Martin. Move coming on a little bit further back in the field too as Brian Rhodes starts to apply a lot of pressure now to Johnny Glasson, and the 65 car of Dougie Jack is starting to drop off the pace a little bit now. Onto the main straight away, and these boys are well and truly at the back of the field now. Mike Medham, and somebody's just pulling off there. Couldn't pick up the driver, but Mike Medham. Very sad day for Mike, who's president of the Western Australian Sporting Car Club. But out in front, have a look at Alan Grice and look at the lead he's established. This man is a true professional. Well and truly in command of the event. And I think we've lost our early leader in Gary Martin. Can't see him. He must have had an excursion, or else he's blown the motor. Second place now held down by Johnny Glasson, but here comes Brian Rhodes, and you can see the smoke pour out of the car as he buries the foot to the floor, trying to make up a lot of ground before they get down into this corner. They're on their last lap now, and the race is on for the minor end of the purse. Alan Grice absolutely got this one shot to bits, and there's Rhodes looking for the outside line through the S's, would you believe, on Johnny Glasson, which is a very dicey part of the track to pull it. Glasson drops across his bows, and Rhodes sitting right behind him into that very tight left-hander, and there goes Dougie Jack in the Charger. He's not out of it by any means for even second place from where he's running at the moment, which is back in fourth, but second, third and fourth having their own private little war out there with Brian Rhodes in the turbocharged XU1. But there's the starter on the line, holding the checkered flag, waiting to see Alan Grice come over the top of the Motorcraft hill. That's not him, that's number 9, Mike Medham. He's practically a lap down at the moment. And we'll see whether or not Grice comes over the top. That looks like Gricey now. Gricey's backed off a lot, and I'll tell you what, Johnny Glasson's up into a challenging position now. Less than 250 metres to go, and Johnny Glasson applies the pressure very hard to Alan Grice. It's a sprint to the wire. Has Grice's car blown up, or is he just waiting for them? But Grice is going to take it out from Glasson, Rhodes and Dougie Jack. A blanket finish, a great finish to the Super 6 Series here at wonderful Wanneroo Park.
Of course, at 7,500 RPM that we run these engines up to, the engine isn't being water-cooled.
At Sandown, prior to that problem, you were right in there mixing it with Moffat. Now you've got it fixed. Can you mix it with the top guys through the rest of the year?
I think so. I believe I've got the best car on the circuit. I've got the best two boys in the country, Pat Purcell and Johnny Scala. There's no question that the car is a potentially front runner. It's just a matter of time. I've still got a little bit to learn about driving these big cars, but when we get our combination in order, I'm sure we'll be right up the front there.
Well, I guess it's a pain for you that now that you seem to have things right, they're about to phase out.
It appears that way. In my opinion, I think the rules should be frozen for 2 years to give all the competitors a chance to wear out the stock that they have, and there's some really good cars amongst this category, and to put the axe through it at the end of this year would be a real crime, I think. There's too much money. This car's worth about $70,000, and at the end of the year you can't sell it because there's no class it can race in.
Looking ahead, have you got any ideas what you will go to eventually in Group A?
Well, at this stage there's no confirmed arrangements have been made with the regulations for Group A, but I would think anybody that didn't go Japanese would be making a mistake.
Meantime, it's Amaroo. It's a hell of a handful, this car around here. How do you manage it?
Well, as I say, the boys put a lot of work into the car. It handles like nothing else I've ever driven. It's got 480 horsepower. Puts the power on the road nicely. We've qualified at a 52.4 this morning, and I think we'll be right.
All righty, we'll be looking for you in the final heat of the better breaks. Thanks very much, Steve Masterton, and it's back to you, Mike.
Mike is up, ready to go racing. Okay, getting the rubber onto the racetrack, but the little Nissan Turbo, 3 big gulps of air in the mixture, and it's off and running, leading the first time up Bitchapave Hill with Steve Masterton in second place. A good start by Richards on the inside, and just back behind him is Dick Johnson in car number 17. Then Gary Wilmington with Brian Callahan and Mike Bergman, the next two back.
That's 3 out of 3, Mike, that Gary Scott has given Masterton the go-by off the front row of the grid. First heat, of course, a small nudge saw him out of business down in the late corner. But since then, he's really shown the way, hasn't he, the first part of the race?
Exactly. If you just keep the lines right, come out of Honda corner. Masterton gets the throttle down and runs down the inside. Just look at the power of the car.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Keep in mind the Nissan Turbo is a bit of a twitchy car to drive at the best of times, and on a very short track like Amaroo, it's quite a handful. Okay, but he's not going to give up. 1 down, 9 remain in the final today. Round 1 of the Better Break Series. The car scoring beneath our camera position on the front straight here at Amaroo Park.
Going through there too, I noticed that Mike Bergman in the big Camaro's got away to a better start this time and is slotted in about 7th spot at the moment.
Steve Masterton going right to the outside, hits the line right for the exit from that corner. And now Gary Scott finds Jim Richards in the BMW up pretty close to him, looking for an inside. Masterton, though, is in front. Looks like a clean sweep for the Ford driver. Here's Gary Scott in the Nissan Turbo, car number 16, Richards in the 31 BMW, and Johnson in the green machine, the Falcon, coming down behind Jim Richards.
Johnson got a ton of power, just hasn't got the car handling the way he'd like it at this stage of the season. Sitting right on the hammer of Jimmy Richards as they come up Bitchapave Hill once more.
Pretty busy time, Dick Johnson. Dick Johnson we pick up on in race cam as they drop into Dunlop Loop. And Jim Richards in the black BMW just ahead of you. How are things going, Dick?
Oh, not too bad, Mike. The old Jimbo, he's certainly all over the road like a mad dog's you know what.
I see having as much fun as you are.
Yeah, I'll just sit back and let him wear his tyres out for a while.
I tell you what, those couple up front are a bit slick, Dick.
Come again, sorry, Gary?
I said the couple up front are a bit slick.
Yeah, you're not wrong. This is a terrible corner, this.
Oh, gee, you're right. Jim's a bit all over the place, isn't he?
Yeah. He doesn't mind a few curves either.
Well, Steve Masterton, Dick, appears to have his act together well, particularly around this course.
Yeah, he certainly does. Good luck to the guy. Because I'm sure that we'll get ours going shortly.
I'll let you concentrate on Jim Richards to see if you can get past there, and we'll follow your progress. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, pal.
Yeah, thanks to Dick Johnson, one of the few drivers who could drop a couple of one-liners and still try to be passing on the inside and outside of other cars. He's still having a good run here, Jim Richards, just poking the nose of the green Ford down, letting Richards know he's serious about trying to pass him. Race settling into a pattern now with Steve Masterton looking very, very strong here today at Amaroo Park. Coming up Bitcher Pave Hill to the crest of the top. There's our race leader.
He might have had some overheating problems and solved them, but he's still running hot at the front of the field. Ahead of Gary Scott in the Bluebird, turbocharged Bluebird, and Jim Richards being hotly chased by Dick Johnson. There he is, Steve Masterton.
Falcon's really got a good grip on this race here at the moment, with Masterton out in front, Johnson in 4th place, Gary Wilmington in another big Falcon holding down 5th spot at the present time, just ahead of Brian Callaghan also in a Falcon. Gary Scott's winner. There's Gary Scott in car number 16, the Turbo Bluebird. He's been able to do the trick off the grid every time, but just the raw power of Masterton's big V8 gets him before they've gone a lap. There he goes over the top. What a neat looking machine they are. And after some fragility in the early stages of last season with their turbos, they seem to have got those a little more, or a lot more reliable now. And as this season unfolds, these cars really are going to be a big threat.
Of course, George Fury in the Nissan Turbo won the Curtain Raiser to Bathurst here at Amaroo Park, the Scholastic 300. Most of the development work in New South Wales on the racetrack had been carried out by Fred Gibson, and Fred drove the series with us at Amaroo Park last year. Gary Scott comes in now as the regular member of the team and takes over the Better Break Series for 1984.
Jim Richards still being hounded by Dick Johnson coming up Bitcher Pave Hill once more. Doesn't say much, does Jim Richards, but when the whips are cracking, he knows how to throw this car around any circuit in Australia. And he wouldn't be in the least concerned about Dick Johnson being that close to him.
No, they're professional racers, have a lot of confidence in their respective ability on any racetrack. There's Richards coming off the Honda corner. Johnson sitting in behind, plans to go for the next round of the Touring Car Championship. You spend 4 days at Simmons Plains doing more development work.
That was close to the wall. Here they come round over the top. Steve Masterton, he's going to run into the biggest cloud of dust you've ever seen in your life as he gets round through Dunlop Loop here that was left by Mike Bergman's big Camaro when he got a little sideways off the circuit.
There's the gap first to second, and the gap from second to third and fourth drivers is coming into view then. Scott very, very tidy indeed. I think he would have benefited greatly by his run here today at Amaroo Park. It takes a while, as the racers like to say, to dial in this circuit. And when you start tackling guys like Steve Masterton that have won here very convincingly, going back a few years in Ford Capris, then up in the Falcon, the locals who run this place better than most, guys like Terry Finnegan, it's quite a big job that Scott has ahead of him to try and win the Better Breaks AMSCAR Series for 84, but he's doing a great job here today. Second at the moment on the road to Steve Masterton.
Third place Jim Richards, Dick Johnson in 4th place, then Gary Wilmington holding down 5th, Brian Callaghan in 6th spot, and Christine Gibson in the turbocharged Pulsar is in 7th place on the circuit at the moment. Teammate of Gary Scott. Scott going through there in car number 16. And of course Christine's husband Fred Gibson drove this car, campaigned this car here last year.
Gary Scott still trailing Steve Masterton by, I suppose, 100 metres. And at least that much again back to Jim Richards and Dick Johnson. So he's virtually running a race on his own, is Gary Scott.
The last lap board coming up for Steve Masterton. Goes across the strike. There's some of the action inside our outside broadcast van here at Amaroo Park today. Our director, Ian Hurst, control of the bringing the pictures on the racetrack to you at home. There's a fellow in control. That's Steve Masterton, about half a lap away from a clean sweep in the opening round of the Better Break Series here today at Amaroo Park. they say Steve Masterton is almost home.
There's no answer to that. Certainly built a big lead.
That's a big performance, actually, because these cars can be a real handful, and I've never seen this car go so well.
And be so quick all day. I think he's thrown the gauntlet down now to the Mazda drivers, because Masterton 3 from 3, unbeaten at Amaroo Park, takes round 1 of the Better Brakes AMSCAR Series. Out of the last turn comes Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW.
Around we go with Bobby Morris. Another gear change, back across the start-finish line. Change down, the left-hander. And on the way, up Mountain Straight.
Fairly angry Bobby Morris there, calling out to the driver of a car in front and waving his fist as he went by.
Telling him to back off.
One thing I think we should recognise is the drivers in this race, particularly in the quick cars, are under immense emotional pressure. They've got to be at absolutely top pitch in terms of concentration for the full period of the race, and they get very wound up.
We were expecting to see Bobby Morris come in to hand over to Alan Moffat. In fact, I think Chris Economaki has Alan Moffat with him down in the pits right now.
Okay, Alan, you're going to get back in the race. What about stepping into a car you've never driven before from a standpoint of seat positioning, seat belt adjustment, all that stuff?
We're about the same, Chris, and the cars are prepared good. Malloy and I have been working together. We're all mates in this business, and we got parts, and some of my parts are in this car anyway.
Well, here you go. It's time to go to work, Alan. Good luck.
Good on you, Edsel. That's a great jet.
Okay. And now here's the car in the pits. Bob Morris will be getting out. And, oh, we've got some damage here in the front corner. Damage in the front corner of the car here. So it's been a tough day for equipment here at Bathurst with the rubbish, as it's called here, inflicting a lot of damage, sheet metal damage on the cars. And the drivers now are getting in. Morris is adjusting Moffat's seat harness to help him get in, filling up the fluid container so that Alan will have something to drink. Unfortunately, we forgot to start our stopwatch when all this began, so we'd have a clocking on this, but it seems to be going quite well. And for the second time today, the car is getting new tires. Now, this is rather a surprise. Before the race, Morris said he hoped the car could go the distance on 2 sets of tires. Well, they've already used up, they're on their 3rd set now, at least on the right side of the car, which is an indication of how hard the car is being pushed out there on the racetrack. Windshield being wiped, and it's one-stop service at its glorious best down here on pit road for the Mount Panorama circuit. The fueling process is over, the tire changing, and there's oil being added as well. So it should be just a few moments before the car goes off. We're going to try then and get a word with driver Bob Morris, who is, there's a fire under the hood here. A small fire under the hood. We're going to need a fire extinguisher down here. We're really in on what's happening at this pit stop. We wonder if Alan Moffat knows how to work with the television, whether our mics are hooked up to him or not. And a couple of seconds, it'll be able to go. And he's off and running, rejoining the fray. And let's now try and get a word with Bob Morris over here, driving the Channel 7 Revel entry.
While you're searching for him, Chris, his stop was 1 minute 43.8 seconds.
A minute. Can we have a look at you here, Bob? 1 minute 46 seconds. Tires, gas. We had a little fire under the hood. I'll let you know. Put out. What kind of shape are you in?
I'm a little bit tired, but the car is brand new.
Really?
Yeah, the Ford is running like to perfection. Absolutely as we started. The temperatures are hanging in the right places. Braking exactly the same place. It's brand new.
Did you have a little trouble earlier with an ignition switch or something?
No, I was alternating the fans because we were getting hot in the traffic very early. I had to lay off it a bit. I didn't want to get involved with any dices, and I didn't want to get caught behind anybody because of the temperatures, because we were stroking along and it's going well. But the big problem I had early, I flat spotted the tyres avoiding Dick Johnson's accident. and I was driving on tenterhooks, waiting for the tyre to blow. I could feel it was a very big flat spot, and I just had to go as far as I could. And every right-hand corner I went round, I half expected to run into the fence because the tyre was ready to go any time.
The right front corner, Bob, has got some damage. The lens of the headlamp is out and everything. What caused all that?
Well, I bumped John Harvey at Forest Elbow. It was an accidental thing, and, you know, I had a bit of a talk to him. He said it's all right. You know, it was one of those things. I slid in there a little bit deep, and he takes a different line, and it was just a tap. And it broke the glass, and it was a little bit dangerous because going down the main straight, bits of glass were flying off. I could see them shooting past the window like bullets. And I didn't want any to come inside.
What about the decision to replace your regular co-driver with Moffat? Were you consulted on that?
I was at the first pit stop. We'll see. I think, you know, we've got 3 good drivers, we've got 4 good drivers to get the car home, so good.
How tough will it be for Moffat in the first few laps, getting into a strange automobile?
He's a professional driver. He's driven his own Falcon round here. It'll be no trouble. 2 or 3 laps, he'll be down to the right times. And, you know, I just hope it keep it going.
A little out of breath, though, Bob. Well, the big and the important question, Bob, will Alan be able to run our television camera properly?
Well, we didn't have the sound hooked up, apparently, so the camera is going, and he just...
Give us great pictures.
Well, I'd like to have a look at some of them.
Well, come on up and take a look now.
Right, but I must say that it's fantastic for Bill O'Brien to step aside and let Alan Moffat in the car.
Well, okay, have your drink and take your rest, and thanks for being so cooperative. Bob Morris, a tired but a very happy man, and he says the Falcon's going to win. Back to the booth.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris O'Connor. There's Big Al. Number 7 is the number, and we'll have more pictures from the car and plenty more action live from Mount Panorama at Bathurst as soon as we return. We're back live at Mount Panorama in the cockpit with Alan Moffat. And I think it will give us an opportunity to make a comparison in the driving style of Bobby Morris that we've seen throughout the telecast today, and Alan Moffat. Moffat in more the reclining position and very, very graceful with the arms. It all seems to be somewhat of a Sunday drive, although he's fairly busy at this stage because of the location at the racetrack.
Yeah, unusual driving style, Mark. I've been watching him. I've never had the chance to see him, but in action naturally before. But watch his left hand. It's the working hand, and it has the most unusual position on the wheel, and that's more than most people would recommend in terms of the crossover. When he's cornering, he has both hands up in the classic 10-2 or maybe 1/4-3 position. But when he's on the straight, he just gives his left hand a rest and puts it on the spoke like a Sydney taxi driver.
Many Sydney taxi drivers, they don't drive as smoothly as that, let me tell you.
They drive as quickly. Look at the left hand, the way he has that reverse grip. Most unusual.
He is coming across the top of the mountain, and our cameras will follow him inside and outside the car as he now starts the drop now into the S's. Down through here, very, very tidy indeed. Moffat won't make any mistakes at all. He'll take his time, sort out the car, make sure how it's running, how it suits him. Then you can start to see him with all the temperatures, all the gauges running as they should. I think you'll see Moffat have one big shot for a run at the leaders. Now, the last corner that brings him back onto Revel Conrod Straight, changes up gear. And this will be the relaxed position as you see Moffat running down the straightaway, absolutely flat strap. That looks like a Sunday driver. Hardly movement at all. There's crosswinds as they take the speed hump, which brings them down into the bottom part of the course. But there you can see, coming down to the speed hump now, you might see a flick of the hand. Not too much breeze blowing through there. Now down through the gears. To third.
Just a moment to
one more.
Peter Board when he returns from having his lunch.
Stand on the gas.
Into the pits in the 9 Sports entry.
That's changed now. Very smooth in the cockpit indeed is Alan Moffat. As he heads up now to left-hander, bring him back onto the run to the top of the mountain one more time. Still has that blinker running. I think that would be the last thing that would be concerning him at this stage, unless someone tries to pass him on the inside.
The team cars are first and second on the track. Car 25, John Harvey leading the race from 05, Peter Brock, and in third place we've got car 6, the Craven Mild Commodore with Alan Grice. And there's the Channel 7 Revel Ford entry with Alan Moffat.
at the wheel.
I think the last time that Alan drove for Bob Morris for the Breville Channel 7 team was at Amaroo Park, and he had one start in a Tirana and won.
What's the last time a driver changed cars in mid-race at the Hardy Ferodo?
Quite a while. But as Bobby said, they have 4 drivers. They also have John Fitzpatrick, who could be brought in from the wings. Otherwise, it was a long trip from Los Angeles for John Fitzpatrick to co-drive with Alan Moffat, and I would think he would also be happy to have a run today in the Hardy Ferodo 1000. Okay, Alan Moffat is back in the pits, has turned the car over to Bill O'Brien, co-driver with Bobby Morris for this race, and talking with Alan Moffat is Peter Malloy, the team manager for the Breville 7 team. Moffat was called in, we believe, 1 or 2 laps earlier, stayed out in the track another lap. He's having discussions and telling Peter Malloy exactly how he found the car and any problems that he may have detected while driving it. Bill O'Brien, who was to do the stint with Bob Morris, has now taken over, so we have at least 3 drivers have had a run in the 7 Breville car today. The race continues out there on the racetrack. There's number 7, Bill O'Brien, and the Breville Everlast car coming down in between a couple of these slower cars through the S's. Dips down now. It's our static camera position where you can see the cars really working, bottoming on the pavement through that section of the track.
Just a minute, we've got Bobby Morris's car there with Bill O'Brien in it, stopped on the track. Now that's the car that was running fourth, the Channel 7 car. He has stopped on the track. I might throw back to you, Mike Raymond.
Yes, noticing the steam coming out of the bonnet area. That's not a good sight. I say the car that has seen 3 drivers going through putting it through its paces today.
There's Bob Morris and Alan Moffat down in the pit. They're watching the screen. They can see what's happened at the top of the circuit. They probably don't know precisely what has happened.
I'd say very dejected Bobby Morris stands there, arm around the shoulder from Alan Moffat, saying, "It always feels terrible, but I felt that way myself once or twice."
In the pits at Mount Panorama, I'm talking with Alan Moffat, and I don't think in all the years I've been coming to Bathurst, Alan, I have ever spoken to a driver who's retired twice in the one race.
I'm sorry I didn't hear you then, Evan.
I was saying I've never spoken to a driver, oh, I'm losing my voice like you're losing cars. I've never spoken to a driver who's retired twice in the same race.
Yes, that is a bit of a unique novelty, isn't it?
Do you think you might know what the trouble is that stopped Bill O'Brien out on the track in the Channel 7 car?
If it had been anybody else but Peter Malloy, I wouldn't have come in. I have a high regard for Peter, and it was his car and his team. He gave me the hurry-up sign, and I thought, well, okay, I'll go a little bit harder. But I was driving it like I would drive my own with a view to the afternoon time, and we had a long way to go. They were a little nervous about their brake wear pad rate, and I thought, well, I'm just going to drive it exactly the way I would my own. And I was aware of the fact when the Holden went by, okay, times were slipping away, but we had a long way to go. When Peter gave it to me the second time, I knew there was no alternative. I came in.
There's a very disappointed man there, Bobby Morris. How's he taking it?
Well, he is disappointed because I did have a professional words to him, and I said, no, I thought it was a mistake to come in. I was driving it the way I thought we could finish the race. And he said, no, it was go or blow. So obviously, Bill O'Brien just put it in a little harder than he would have liked to. I thought, I never like thrashing a car. I never do. I think, and when you do, you have to know it yourself. And you can't get into a car, have people telling you to take it easy on the brakes, hold the revs down to 6.5, and break the damn lap record. So I can appreciate they were disappointed. Maybe I wasn't going as fast as they would like me to be going. There was a dump truck in the middle of the S's down in the dip. There was oil in the S's. The other Marlboro car crashed in the S's. Naturally, I wasn't going the speeds that Bobby Morris was going. But I thought the plan would be to hand it back to him a car that he could take to the finish line. That's how we've won here in the past, so I did nothing I would normally not do.
You felt you were still in a winning position?
Well, at this time of the day, Evan, anybody's in a winning position. And certainly we're not in a winning position now because we're not circulating.
It's been an extraordinary race, Alan Moffat. What's the reason that so many cars have had trouble?
I really don't think I can put that down to anything, Evan, other than that we're still going through the new phase of regulations. The 1980 decade start when we've got new regulations, and it does take a long time to get to grips with a particular wheel. There's so many parameters, so many facets, so many angles go into preparing a good race car, and I don't think all the teams are really 100% to grips with them yet.
It's Bobby Morris on camera now, Alan Moffat and Bill O'Brien. 3 drivers out of this year's Hardy Australia 1000, and the men leading are in the order in which they came last year. Number 1, Peter Brock, number 2, Peter Jansen, and number 3, Alan Grice. That really is extraordinary.
Makes you almost start believing in a Commodore, doesn't it?
Evan had an interview with Alan Moffat a while ago.
Yes.
He seemed to believe that he was driving the car as he would his own, and that was conserving it to finish.
Well,
is there some conjecture that Moffat was too hard on the car or wasn't going fast enough for the team's liking?
Well, he definitely wasn't going fast enough for the team's liking, because I was using the rev limit that we'd set at 6,500, and I generally looking after the car, and we were averaging 26s with a few 25s thrown in, and Moffat was 32s and 33s, so it was disappointing to see him going so slowly.
Yes.
We did wave him on.
Alan Grice.
Oh, there's a bit of drama there.
Alan Grice at the bottom of Rebel Conrod Straight into the sand.
Commodores do have troubles.
Change down, the left-hander. And on the way up Mountain Straight.
Together, we're all mates in this business.